It's usually Donald Trump Sr. making waves on Twitter. But when news first broke about the investigation into a massive college admissions scam, his oldest son, Don Jr., stepped up to the keyboard when he dug up an old tweet from Felicity Huffman, one of the 33 parents charged in the case. In 2016, she wrote, "What are your best hacks for the back-to-school season?" Don Jr. retweeted her, adding, "I'm learning some new ones as we speak. Stay tuned." So, stay tuned we did. According to the University of Pennsylvania school newspaper, a, quote, string of donations Trump may have made in the late 90s roughly coincides with his children's enrollment at Penn, both Ivanka and Don Jr. And as we now know, buying your way into college seems to run in the family. The president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, also had a little help getting into his school of choice, Harvard. My next guest, ProPublica editor Dan Golden, first exposed Kushner's college acceptance path, paved by a $2.5 million fatherly contribution. In his book, The Price of Admission, How America's Ruling Class Buys Its Way into Elite Colleges and Who Gets Left Outside the Gates. Dan, it's good to see you again. Thanks for being here.
Good to see you, too.
Anything Felicity Huffman or Laura Laughlin or the local guy, John Wilson, the private equity guy from Hyannisport, anything that they did really surprise you?
It wasn't really a surprise, but it was interesting that they took what I wrote about, the legal but questionable giving of big money to universities to get your kid in. They took it to another criminal, even more brazen level. So
why did they, by the way? One of the things I haven't understood in this whole story, why not just give $1 million to Yale or USC or $3 million or whatever you got to do and play the legal route as you described rather than the one that could end up getting you in the can?
Well, I think this college counselor at the heart of the case, this consultant named Singer, the mastermind, I think he was selling certainty. I think he said to these parents, look, it's gotten so tough to get into these schools now that your kids may not get in even with a big donation. But what I can do for you is I can give them a fake inflated test score. I can bribe the coaches to get them preference to recruited athlete, and then you're guaranteed. You don't have to worry at all.
I want to return to the legal route in a minute. What's the impact, do you think, of these charges? I mean, Andrew Lelling was on national television live as he's announcing the indictments. You know, I sort of analogize it, this may be a horrible analogy, to Bob Kraft's arrest. My guess is there are far fewer guys going to massage parlors, questionable massage parlors, at least for the time being. Are there going to be far fewer people doing what they did for fear of ending up in jail, do you think? Or is this like we have a attention span of a gnat and we'll just move on to the next thing?
Well, I think more people will retreat to the legal route of making the big donation. I also think colleges might look with a little more skepticism about kids recommended by these independent counselors. So you know, people might retreat to safer ground for a while.
As far as I know, there's no evidence, speaking of colleges, that they themselves, the administrators, the top people, knew. But do they share part of the blame by creating an environment in which this is more likely to happen, or is that unfair?
No, of course they do. I mean, they developed and perpetuated a system that helps rich people. And, you know, that was taken to a higher level by these people. But for example, they have a system where you get preference in admissions no matter what sport you play, even if it's like crew or horseback riding that you know most kids don't have a chance to do. So here they took advantage of that preference, just with the added wrinkle that the kids didn't even participate in those sports. But if that wasn't a preference, they wouldn't have done this. It wouldn't have made any difference.
So what's the difference? This is stupid to say other than the criminal law, but I'll say it anyway. What's the difference between Charles Kushner giving $2.5 million to Harvard, and lo and behold, his kid gets in shortly thereafter, Jared, and what Felicity Huffman did? I mean, in terms of what's wrong with the college admissions scene. I'm not playing prosecutor right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. It is kind of a thin line. I mean, I guess one argument you could make is Kushner's money went to the endowment, so theoretically it would have funded good things like financial aid. Now, I don't believe in prostituting admissions to get money for financial aid, but financial aid is still a good thing. That's probably better than directly bribing the coach or bribing the test administrator.
What's wrong with whatever expression, prostituting admission to? I mean, if Harvard could say with a straight face, I don't know if they can, we took the $2.5 million, and well, maybe Jared Kushner wouldn't have, hypothetically, maybe wouldn't have gotten in. There are 4 other kids whose financial aid we could not have afforded, but now we're able to thanks to the largesse of Charles Kushner. So why isn't that okay, even though it doesn't feel quite right?
Well, a couple things. I mean, one is these universities have gigantic many multi-billion dollar endowments, and it's hard to believe they couldn't find the money somewhere else. And also, they should be able to raise money based on the quality of their programs, just like other charities do.
So should college, in the hopes that Andrew Lelling is going to convince other Felicity Huffmans and people like her, this is not a good idea, even if you want to grease the path for your kid. Should colleges, with all this light shown on the whole picture, by you years ago and again and by this whole scandal, should they say, we're not going to take these kinds of contributions if they're in any way connected to admission, or is transparency enough? What's the solution? You can become the czar of this issue. What would you dictate happen with the legal stuff, not the illegal stuff?
Well, I would get rid of legacy preference, which is the preference for children of alumni. I think kids should get in on their own merit rather than their lineage. Money-wise, I would create a firewall between fundraising and admissions. You know, right now what happens, it's not the admissions office that is so gung-ho to let in the kids because their parents made a big donation. It's the development office. They put the name on the list and they say to admissions, we want this kid.
Does anybody do that? I mean, does anybody? I mean, I would assume they would all, if all the university presidents were sitting here, they'd nod in agreement. That makes sense. It makes so much sense. Are they doing it now in any of these elite universities?
Well, virtually all elite universities have these kinds of preferences. I mean, I did point to a couple exceptions in my book, maybe most notably Caltech, which is so hard demanding a scientific school and has such a small student body that you can't hide somebody in the student body. You couldn't make a donation to get your underqualified kid in because they'd flunk out right away. So Caltech is protected by its rigor.
We only have 45 seconds left. Can you see in your lifetime there being a true meritocracy on the college admissions front, or is that pipe dream stuff?
I think it's mostly a pipe dream because the system, the way it is, benefits the rich, the powerful, the celebrated, across the ideological spectrum. Democrats as well as Republicans who are rich want to get their kids into these elite colleges. So I think, you know, for the groundswell might be for deep and significant change, but it's hard to see it happening. The colleges want to please these people, and these people, they want their kids in those colleges.
So there's no real constituency for reform except journalists like you and an occasional prosecutor, yes?
Journalists and so many Americans who believe in meritocracy, but they don't have the final say.
Right. The kids who don't have the special deals. Dan, congratulations on your great work. As
Thanks,
always,
Jimmy.
great to see you.
Great to see you.
Dan Golden.